up your pyramid eyes.
Hello and welcome to the QUACKCAST, the Drunkduck QUACKCAST. This is QUACKCAST number 580. I am Ozone Ocean, and with me is Tance, Baines, and Pit Face.
Hello.
Hello.
Baines is not saying anything because he's dying of COVID currently.
Hello.
But for Baines, you do have COVID, don't you? That's we hope you can quash that horrible illness and be nice and well. So the subject of today's particular QUACKCAST is fantasy worlds and how they cross over with the real worlds. You know, this is literary fantasy worlds, of course. I'm not talking about real ones. And, you know, the mechanics of making these two things exist in the same kind of universe and how they interact. And if you keep one secret, how do you keep it secret? You know, how does it work? Is that you know, you can run into suspension of disbelief roadblocks there. So that's what we're going to talk about. But before we get into that, I've got to bring up the featured comic. QUACKCAST has given us a feature. It's called Up the Pyramid. Quai, please tell us about Up the Pyramid.
Hello, this is QUACKCAST, and the feature I've selected for this week is Up the Pyramid by Budlow, and it is rated E for everyone. The road to self-actualization is filled with arduous challenges and obstacles. The climb is high, and many have previously attempted the climb with little success. The journey to the tip of the pyramid is the goal, once food, shelter, clothing, and relationships become an afterthought. Daily interactions expose the fragility of modern relationships and the impermanence of a dream home. The comic pages are produced in black and white, using precise and professional inked lines and text bubbles. Turn up the adrenaline and get up to ramming speed and read Up the Pyramid by Budlow, rated E.
And that was QUACKCAST with Up the Pyramid. Okay, so next up we've got the music. Gummalus has given us a theme this week to a comic called Cold Blooded. Obviously about reptiles. So, in this music, coils and coils, slithering intrigue, smooth scales clatter over dry sands. A powerful, muscular form wriggles through the shimmering desert heat towards the nuclear furnace of the hot yellow sun. Heavy synth, rhythmic sounds. So take it away, Gummalus, with Cold Blooded. was the featured music, Cold Blooded. Thank you very much for that, Gumwallace. And that's a comic by Perry's Hotter. Rated T. Perry's Hotter. What?
Oh, I thought you said Perry Thotter.
No, it's even weirder. Perry's Hotter. So whoever you think is hot, Perry is hotter. There you go.
Can't argue with that logic.
Exactly. So you thought Helmet was hot? Perry's got it going on there. Even more. Okay, so we're having a talk about fantasy worlds and how they interact with our real world in fiction. And how can you keep a fantasy world secret? Like, does that really work? And this is more popular in things that are, I don't know, what I'm trying to say is the ones where they try and make it secret, where there is a hell of a lot of interaction. That's a slightly bad writing. I think we can, like, Terrence, that was your point, wasn't it, originally? That it's bad writing
the
to
idea
do that.
the idea in general is that if you're going to have a parallel magic world that is in full communication with the real quote-unquote world, and you have people from the magic world interacting and having agency in the real world and vice versa, it's extremely hard to sell the idea that it remains secret for centuries upon centuries, when you have at any given moment easily tens or even hundreds of thousands of people in the know in the real world. You would at the very least you would have like the conspiracy theorists that are totally trying to out this, at least, and have others be skeptical, blah blah blah. I mean, there would at least be some kind of discussion that this thing exists, and not have the real world be magically quote unquote oblivious at all times. That's one thing. And the other thing is that if your premise is that the real world's history remains intact as we know it without the interference of magic, then again you have issues, because again it is extremely unlikely that you wouldn't have magical occurrences in the real world, assuming that your wizards remain magical in the real world as well. So that was the premise of the article, that if you are going to have a parallel magic world, perhaps you should consider having at least some altered history, or at least the way that the world interacts is different, that sort of thing. But having it just be in parallel and only when you as the author want it to be significant in the real world or non-significant in the real world doesn't feel very organic, and it really puts a strain on suspension of disbelief, especially if it's not like a feel-good little fairy tale, but you want to make it into a huge saga that people take seriously. So that's the thing. Sorry for the happy sound effects. Really.
It's lovely. As we were doing our little video on the subject for our patrons, what came to my mind was the popular stories of Mortal Instruments by Cassandra Clare, which I did listen to on audiobook, and they have a popular TV series and a movie based on this stuff, so it has got the kind of Harry Potterish level of recognition, and that does the same kind of thing. So there's like a bit of a magical world. There's exactly the same as Harry Potter, pretty much, in that there is a parallel magical world that only these people know about, and it interacts intimately with our world because they've all got like agencies or little agencies in all the big cities in our real world. And there's like vampires and werewolves and fairies, mermaids and stuff like that, demons crossing over into our real world, but only these what are they called, like whatever these special people called, shadow walkers or something like that. I can't remember, but they're the only ones who can actually know that these kind of things exist and see these things happening. And to the rest of the world, even though there's this like artificial kind of alternative world existing around them, and there's these magical beings and witches and wizards and all this kind of stuff existing at the same time, no one knows about it. No one ever sees werewolves or vampires, or like no one knows anyone who's been ripped apart by vampires or werewolves. But apparently they're there all the time. So it beggars belief. It's you rub up against that suspension of disbelief issue.
Yeah. I found that with the Dresden Files books. I've only read the first two. They were pretty good. Interesting character.
Oh,
well,
Dresden Files. Really? I know there's a TV series based on that.
Yeah, I think the TV series was very different from the books, as far as I know. I didn't see it, but it's even in book 2. It's like, oh my gosh, man! There's vampires, werewolves, ghosts, wizards, gods and fairies, and like there's so much stuff. It's like, how does everyone not know about this? It's just everywhere, and it's so extreme. And to as far as I noticed, anyway, it doesn't really explain how and why it's kept a secret.
Yeah, that's exactly. It's actually quite popular for this to happen, isn't? This kind of genre to have this, and with a fantasy world, and there's no one else knows about it because there's like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, it's sort of a similar thing. There's not really one strict fantasy world in there per se, but there sort of is. And there's all these kind of fantasy monsters and all this kind of stuff, but no one really knows about them. No ordinary person knows about them. It's always only the select few people in what they call themselves, like the Scooby Gang or something. They're the only ones who know about the monsters and the things like that.
Yeah.
So,
the X-Files, similar.
Yeah, no one believes it, and you think, well, and even Scully continues to be a skeptic in the whole bloody show. Yeah.
Like season 8, she's still like, I just don't quite buy it.
Yeah.
After the
that I think also goes like on the other, like that's the other extreme, when you have this die-hard skepticist that has tangible evidence every single time and then goes back to, oh yeah, I don't believe. That again, the other side of the coin, I would say, in these sort of things. Like that also is ridiculous, in my opinion. So
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think Scully kind of slowly came around. They didn't
very slowly
blind to everything, but yeah.
Like she should.
We have a dynamic to keep up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She should have come around after like the 4th episode.
yeah.
I mean, in the early episodes, there was a formula where like only Mulder would see the really crazy stuff for the most part.
Yeah.
So that is a little too formulaic, but that's sort of how they did it.
But yeah, it does beg a belief that and it harms your suspension of disbelief. And in X-Files, oh sorry, Pit, you go.
No, if you're going to continue on X-Files, you should probably continue that thought.
I was going to say, so much of that stuff happened that it became a bit silly, at least to me anyway, that, hang on, this weird stuff is happening all the time, 100%, non-stop. So it's none of it is secret. None of it can be really hidden or covered up or considered like an X-file because it's so freaking common. So, yeah, anyway, go on. Sorry.
No, all good. No. I'm trying to think of examples where it's a little bit more believable, and the one I come back to, granted, I think I've seen both first and second, but it's Never Ending Story, because in order to get into that world, you have to pass. You don't even necessarily get into the world, but it deals with a specific book, and that's tucked away in a library, with like one old man who knows about it or something like that. And that's the kind of situation where you can more plausibly see, like, yeah, there's not going to be a lot of people to read this book, right? So the people who know about it are going to be very select few, very slim. And then of course it's like all mystical and origin and stuff. So like that's the kind of thing where it's a little more believable that everybody's not out riding Valcours and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
Oh,
for sure. That's where it's completely believable, right? Like, depending on how the story plays out, like there are pockets of people saying all manner of crazy stuff in our real world. Most people don't.
Yeah.
Men in Black did it well, I think.
I was going to say.
Oh,
yeah. They have technology for it.
Numeral, whatever it is.
Neuralizer.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I got zapped by one before, so I couldn't remember what it was called.
Well, and that plays in a way too on suspicions that we already have. Like, for instance, I'm not a big conspiracy person, but like things like the experiments that would happen in the Cold War in like the 60s, the 50s and 60s, like MK Ultra and stuff like that was considered a conspiracy theory until it came out that it absolutely did happen. So when you think of stuff like with Men in Black, that reality lends a little bit more credibility to stuff like that than, to help you kind of suspend your disbelief that, well, why aren't we aware that, aliens are everywhere? Exactly. Why aren't we aware that aliens are everywhere? That kind of thing.
One thing that comes to mind is...
Why didn't Will Smith use that thing at the Oscars? That's what I wonder.
Yeah, that's the other thing that I like about it is that it does come out a little bit in the tabloids, just nobody believes it.
Yeah, that's great.
Deliberately.
And I really like that. They even use it as a way to see where they have to go or something like that.
One thing that comes to mind is, say, Hellraiser. In there, you have a fantasy world in that there's hell is a real place, and like this weird kind of whatever Cenobites. They cross over into it.
They come out from the lament configuration.
Yeah, yes, exactly. But so that's a kind of a hidden world that not many people know about. But then in the later movies of it, they just go crazy and start killing everybody.
Yeah,
and
we don't go there.
Then it just becomes like it spoils the suspension of disbelief. Not only harms it, it ruins it, because then like you think the whole world would have to know about this because they've killed so many people in such a wide-ranging way, and now the puzzle can't be secret anymore. And nothing about it makes sense. It's not special or interesting because everybody would have to know. Yeah.
There's in the second movie, there's something that feels indeed really special about when she crosses over into hell, right? Because it sincerely feels like she's passed through the veil into the world that she shouldn't be in, right? And like it's like when you play a game and all of a sudden you glitch through the floor and you start falling through. Like, we shouldn't be here. I don't know how to get out of this. Like, call for help. But I'm alone. It's and it makes it feel. I really like the second Hellraiser movie a lot. Specifically because of that. It feels it's a fantasy in a sense that she's almost like Alice in Wonderland, but
in a bad way.
Yeah, in a real bad way.
Good point about the Hellraiser world being like Alice in Wonderland. It's quite interesting. I like that. Very dark take. It was probably in Clive Barker, was that the writer?
Yep.
So it's probably in his mind when he did it too, I imagine. He's a clever fellow.
Yeah.
So yes, the Hellraiser world, how that is one that is well, you can say it's like Clive Barker writes it, had big input, and didn't he direct the first movie or something like that? Or
Yeah, the first one he wrote and directed it, I think, right?
yeah.
I think. It's his baby, yeah.
But that gets sold on to studios and all different people like have their input into it, and they change it from what it is originally, so we can't blame him for making a poorly constructed fantasy world or parallel world or whatever, because other people ruin it. That's the way this stuff happens.
Yeah. I don't think he had anything to do with the later movies, though, did he?
Exactly.
I don't think he did.
It doesn't sound like it at all, the way it's done.
No. But yeah, and I forget how in the second movie she actually enters hell, because the way it is in the first movie, I mean, it's the opposite. The Cenobites are coming to our world, and that's the first kind of taste we get of it, right? I'd like to see more things take that kind of approach where we're not necessarily dumped into the other world right away, but we start interacting with denizens from it in our own maybe, and kind of get this. That could be really effective, especially for like what Hellraiser is, horror, because we've gotten a taste of the horrible things that can come from there. What happens when you're thrown into a world of it, right? And you're lost and you're alone and you have to navigate this world by yourself. It becomes 10 times more effective, rather than if the second movie would have happened first, where we're just kind of, she's in the asylum and then is just kind of dumped into hell. Still, I mean, visually, it still would have been very effective because there's all sorts of weird little things. The thing that comes and chases her through the tunnel and stuff, but it's far more effective because we get a taste of what is in there in the first movie while still being in our own world.
Exactly. It really does remind me of Alice in Wonderland the more I think about it, because Alice goes to Wonderland when she sees the bunny, the rabbit, the white rabbit in the real world, wearing the waistcoat. So she does interact with him in the real world, and she follows him down the rabbit hole into Wonderland, and then gets lost in the surreal world that is there.
Which honestly can be hellish. I mean, if you even Disney-fied, if you think about it, it can be pretty hellish. So, totally.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's been so many adaptations now. Well, very loose adaptations, but they're a dime a dozen. Alice in Hell, or like, well, that's a Name of an Annihilator song. But but I mean, like the concept where she goes to Wonderland and it's all like dark and morbid and gritty and twisted and stuff. But yeah, even without that though, even just how it was like in the book, or even in the Disney movie, just how discombobulating it is. She almost gets her head chopped off, for fuck's sake. Like,
yeah, and then you have the oyster babies that get eaten. Like, we're talking dead babies here. Cannibalized, not cannibalized, but eaten. Right?
Yeah. Exactly. It's quite horrific, and then she goes back again through the looking glass. So there's two versions, 2 times when she goes into this horrible world.
And like another world that I appreciated in general is Oz, like Wizard of Oz. I really like it because I can believe that she goes there, either in her head, like you can have your own theories about Dorothy and whether the world is her imagination.
Fever dream. Yeah.
Yes. Or whether it is an actual, different dimension and stuff, but it does not really affect, quote unquote, the real world. She has to wake up to the real world again. So, yeah, and I really like it as a crazy-ish world, but not exactly crazy, and has all sorts of weirdly violent stuff in there. Yeah.
Very violent.
Yeah.
It's a lot
Yeah.
more structured than the Alice in Wonderland world. People like to
Yeah.
relate it to that because they both have young girls as the protagonist, but it's a very different world. It's a highly structured fantasy world with kingdoms and rulers and countries and all this kind of stuff, and it's very developed.
Honestly, when I read Alice in Wonderland, it felt like I don't have any actual experience of it, but it really felt like it was written by someone on something.
Well, you're not the only person to ever think that, Tanya.
No,
Gertz, too.
totally.
Yeah.
But it's the only experience reading that I have had that gave me this very intense impression. I have heard of other authors, writing pile high and stuff like that. But this, I feel like this is like the best experience of what it is being high by proxy available.
I didn't get that impression at all when I read it. It seemed like a
Really?
good children's book to me. Like Alice in Wonderland did, but Oz. Was
No, I'm talking
too
about
structured.
Alice in Wonderland.
Oh, you're talking about Alice in Wonderland. Okay, I thought you were talking about Wizard of Oz.
No,
She brought
Oz
it up, but then
feels
she
structured,
transitioned.
like crazy-ish.
Oh
but
yeah,
not-
I agree. Yeah, Alice in Wonderland, definitely. That was just so insane. The drink me's and the eat me's and this kind of stuff.
and the Cheshire Cat and
Yeah,
Bert, everything is like is.
I agree. It's a real experience all the way through. It's just not many sane people would come up with these concepts.
Yeah,
as a stream
and
of consciousness.
coming to think of it, the only time I have ever felt like this was when I had food poisoning so bad that I almost needed to be hospitalized. And I had like a very, very high fever, and my brain made up stuff.
Yeah. It's
And-
very much fever dream kind of material.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
not pleasant stuff. Like it's not like, oh, let's go here or go there. It's
Yeah.
like this fire is coming to get you, and you have to take care of the giant rats in the bathroom. Yeah, you have to clean right now. Like that's
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
man.
like your brain is hyper anxious and it.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I fucking hate those. Usually with mine, it'll like, I'll get like really anxious stuff will happen, and then at the same time, I'll have a song that gets stuck in my head for the entire night, and just not even just like a little piece of a song. And so as I'm going through the stupid dream, at the same time, the same like chorus or refrain will be going on over and over and over again. And by the time I wake up, I'm fucking exhausted.
Yeah.
I hate
man.
fever dreams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
Alice in Wonderland, that kind of thing.
It really is, and I don't think I have read anything that approximates that,
Mm.
except Lewis Carroll. Like,
I thought Dr. Seuss must have been on bath salts.
Yeah.
Dr. Seuss is hilarious.
I have never read Dr. Seuss. Somehow it's like I tried, but I cannot really say I have read it. Even as a kid, I didn't like him very
I
much.
loved it as a child, mainly because of the illustrations. Because
Yeah.
I just
Great
loved the
illustrations,
drawings. Yeah.
And I think the Cat in the Hat was a stand-in for his drug dealer.
The green eggs and ham was some really bad hash they got once.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Maybe it was a bad translation. I don't know. I mean, I really didn't like it as a kid.
If it didn't talk to you, if it didn't speak to you, it didn't speak to you. You don't have to,
All right.
you're not obligated to love Dr. Seuss.
I just feel like even in Greece he's super popular, and I always feel like I'm the only weirdo that just doesn't
Get it?
doesn't compute
Yeah.
that.
Nothing there
Yeah.
for it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Freak.
Don't have to like all pop culture like everyone else does.
But in terms of the going into fantastical worlds, thinking back about the movie that I told you guys about for the cast that I watched last night, called Last Night in Soho, it kind of deals with that. Although, so basically, this modern girl, when she sleeps, she goes back and forth. When she sleeps, she basically goes back in time to the 60s and watches this woman named Sandy, who is living out this part of her life. And although the time that she goes back to is an actual time, there's no like magic or anything like that involved. It's just kind of an unexplained power that she has, which I think is fine. But every time she goes back to the 60s, without it being a quote unquote magical world, it still feels, excuse me, fantastical in a sense because of the way the cinematography sets everything up. So basically, this woman, Sandy, she wants to get into show business, dancing and singing and stuff, and she's already a very kind of louder than life person. And so she enters this world of like burlesque and stuff. And those scenes feel very surreal in the sense that they're kind of made. And then as things go along, being that it's a movie that needs a plot point, it becomes excuse me, clear that that glitz and glam fantasy isn't everything that we think it is. I need to cough my lungs out. I'll be back. Talk amongst yourselves.
Oh dear, we're watching Pitface like die at the moment.
Yeah.
It looks very painful.
Yeah.
I'm back. Ooh, it's actually better now, believe it or not. But yeah, we start to see that the fantasy of that glitz and glam isn't cracked up to what we think it is. Underneath, it's a lot of, taking advantage of people and manipulation and people being caught in terrible situations that they can't escape from and what happens because of that. So I liked that aspect of that movie a lot. They were able to take something that isn't magical at all by nature, a time period that isn't magical, and make it feel like a fantasy land in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That sounds really. I'll have to check that out now.
Yeah, yeah.
And that, like, listening to you talk about this, reminded me of a very intense K-drama, which was, police thriller, nothing romantic or anything about that. So, and it is called Tunnel. And the idea was that there was this this detective from the police who is chasing a killer, a serial killer in the 80s. And he chases him, and this guy is like a spectre. He does a hit and then disappears, and you cannot really find it. It's like he disappears like a ghost. But at some point, because this guy is really good, he manages to catch him in the act and avert a murder, and then chase him into a tunnel. And this tunnel transports him to the killer's time period, which is now. So the fantasy land for the detective is our world. And it feels like we are the ones that are in the fantasy land. And he comes from the real world, which is like 1980s South Korea.
Yeah.
And,
cool.
And it's really super cool because he has to, first of all, he realizes, he gets this really horror realization that his daughter and his wife are really in a bad place. I think his wife is dead, killed at the hands of this killer who now knows that he's like the one threat, because only he and the killer know about this tunnel, and the killer goes back in the 80s to do his kills because he knows that he cannot be caught since he is from the modern world.
Yeah.
So you have this back and forth where you have both of them have to interact in both worlds, and the fantasy world is the opposite world for these two main characters, the protagonist and the antagonist, and it is one of the best thrillers I have seen. You like, if you start it, I recommend to do it on like a bank holiday or something. It's 16 episodes because you have to see it to the end. That's what happened to me. So yeah, it's really, really good.
Cool.
What's it called?
The tunnel?
The tunnel.
Just
tunnel. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, or else you get Der Tunnel, which is another movie.
That's one like the Batman.
The Batman. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Suicide Squad, it's all so confusing. But
Yeah.
Tunnel.
You're right. There
fantastic.
are a bunch of movies
Yeah.
with the same name, just the in front of them. Stupid.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Stupid.
Pa.
Yeah, it's time travel movies can be quite interesting, and especially when there is like more interaction between the different worlds and stuff like that, and what the past person can bring to the future. Or you think, like, say if there is time travel, why aren't more people time traveling? Why is it only these ones? It's just a special case.
Yeah.
They get caught up in it.
Well, I think they do explain it, actually. They do explain it because I think something has happened. I don't remember it well. I haven't seen it in a while. But I think there is a reason why only these two people can do this and nobody else. But they do explain it in a way that, at least for me, it suspended my disbelief easily. So I think there was some specific circumstance that allowed it for these two people.
Okay.
But I don't remember what it was, honestly. I just remember that it checked out. I mean, it checked out enough for me to feel like, okay, here we are, I can watch this. So,
well, that works. Yeah, if it convinces you and your suspension of disbelief isn't strained, then it works.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
I remember there was a very nice movie as well. I just don't remember the title very well. I think Frequency or something like that, which was like
Well, I think it was Frequency because your synopsis reminded me of Frequency.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, it basically, and it's just having radio waves across the time barrier.
Communication across time. Yeah.
Yeah, that was also really cool.
Where a son with his father is decades dead in a fire, and somehow they become able to communicate with each other across time through the radio.
Mm-hmm. I think it was because like there was a specific weird once in a lifetime phenomenon that allowed it.
That's right. Yeah, it was like some kind of like a maximum overdrive type of like a phenomenon, like Aurora Borealis-ish thing. Yeah, that's right. So suddenly you're in the right place at the right time with these right cosmic conditions, you can talk to your father, and it becomes a plot with a serial killer as well, which I thought was great. Some people thought that was the movie takes a weird turn suddenly into that, but to me it was great.
You need a little bit more spice, just throw a serial killer in there.
Oh. I mean, the son is a cop, so a detective, so it works, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, that was good. Good movie.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of, these are the good examples now. Like, I had a bad example come into my head, which is, of course, a very silly children's movie, and it gets a pass. Don't remember the title again, but it's like this kid gets transported back in time to medieval times, and he, having knowledge of technology and other stuff from
so like a
modern
kid in
times,
King Arthur's court or something.
something like that. Could be that. I don't remember.
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
It could be though. It sounds familiar. And he like one-ups everyone because
Jewish rad.
Yeah, ancient and medieval people are stupid, and modern people are smart, and even the kids are smart. Like I really don't like that approach.
Yeah, me neither.
It's like the Renaissance man has come to save you and lift you from the ways and backwater swamp-like life or whatever. So yeah,
primitive people. You primitive people.
Yes, exactly. It's like, I have come, peasants.
I think it was. I want to say it was the Sandman series, the comics. I'm not positive about that, but they had these cosmic beings, and so all the crazy stuff was happening in other realms or or whatever. But I think there was an element in there where, like, humans would see these cosmic beings or these strange beings, and the beings weren't invisible, but they would just be dismissed. Like the passerby would just see them and then dismiss them. I always thought that was really cool, like a really cool element of like how many things do we just see every day and we just dismiss them.
Yeah.
Something extraordinary is right in front of us. We don't even know it.
Yeah, for sure. That's pretty cool. It makes you think.
Yeah. If you were just looking closely enough, you would see incredible things. The best of the X-Files and shows like that were like that, It's like if you go into these dark corners, into these little places, and, if you look closely enough and you're a detective, you can find all this wild stuff.
Well, my favorite thing like that is Scooby-Doo, where then they unmask the guy and then only at the end.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Man, and you're tenacious.
But like with some things, you don't need like a super in-depth explanation as to like why not everybody knows about it or stuff like that. Like for instance, take Back to the Future. I guess now I'm on the time traveling thing because I was also thinking of Bill and Ted. But take Back to the Future for instance. Like it's totally plausible that Marty is in the situations that he's in because he happens to know the crazy ass scientist who discovers how to go back in time, and that's why he does this. Or Bill and Ted, they're the reason that they go back in time is because they're the chosen ones, and their music has to save the world, bring peace to the planet.
True.
And is that plausible? No, but it's fun. It's a fun explanation. Sometimes you just need to be kind of fun, depending on your story, I guess. But that to me, that's totally fine.
And it's also like if a time traveler came into your life, like who would ever come to that conclusion that you must be a time traveler?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Nobody would ever put that together.
It's obvious you're a time traveler.
You're just crazy. We'll put you away in the asylum, and you'll be forgotten, and you'll die there because you have no immunities to what we have now. So we don't even have them. So good luck.
Yes.
Speaking of which,
COVID has taught us a sorry lesson.
Quantum Leap, similar, but even more, I won't say believable, but the secrecy of it is more believable because his consciousness is jumping into other people's bodies. So
It's
nobody else.
really good with the secrecy because it's sort of hinted at, the whole thing. His only communication with the real world is Al. And we, as audience members, don't even know the world Al comes from. We get glimpses of it occasionally, and there is an episode where, the episode takes place in Al's world. But mostly for the entire run of the show, we don't know anything about the world that Al comes from.
That's true.
It's so secret that it's secret from us. We don't even know who this who does Al always talk to, like Fozzie or something. I can't remember, some weird name. Izzy, I don't know. We don't know anything about any of this stuff. It's just he is our only point of contact with the real world. So it's very well shut off. Separated.
Neat concept. I don't really know the show that well. I had some friends who were huge fans of it back in the day.
It's a brilliant show, Baines. You really should binge it. It's you should binge it. It's awesome. X-Files.
Yes.
It's so good.
I saw the one where he plays Imagine on the guitar, and the guitar playing is fake, and it was just hard for me to watch, so I couldn't watch it.
What? Actors not knowing how to play guitar? What is? I can't believe that. No.
It just looked fake. I don't mind that, but it just looked really okay, he's obviously not playing. It's it's a pet peeve.
He's pretending to play Imagine, and he's just I was trying to come up with a witty thing. Never mind.
Insert witty thing here.
Yeah.
Imagine you can't see me.
Imagine you could play guitar when you can't. Well, okay, so let's wrap it up then, I suppose. What do you reckon?
We've got to go back to the future.
Yes.
People.
Oh yeah, time travel. That's a fantastic subject. We'll have to do a QUACKCAST on that at some point.
We probably have. We can just time travel to it and repost it.
Yeah. So we are. Mic drop. Boom. All right. Bye-bye, people.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to QUACKCAST 580.
Bye.
Smell my fingers.